Welcome to Caribbean Bridges. And in this edition, we observe ICT Week, thanks to our friends at the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. It's from the 20th to the 24th of September, and the theme, Regional Imperatives for Digital Transformation Post-COVID-19. This is an opportunity for a progress report on CARICOM's efforts to function as a single ICT space. It's a mandate born of the Treaty of 1989, which directed the facilitation of the coordination of the planning, programming, and development of intra-regional and international communications networks to meet the immediate and future telecoms needs of the region, to assist the development of national components of regional and international telecoms, and to promote the general awareness of the telecommunications needs of the Caribbean region and its potential for promoting the socio-economic development of the region. Well, let's find out exactly what's happened since that treaty. To joining us is Michelle Garcia, the communications specialist at the CTU. She's charged with the mandate to provide effective communications and business development support for the CTU Secretariat. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication studies in Spanish, a master's of science in international affairs, and recently completed a law degree. Congratulations to you, Ms. Garcia, and welcome. Tell us about the CTU Week.
Thank you, Julian. And I wish to thank you for having us on your program today. Now, before I continue, I wish to emphasize that the CTU is the premier ICT organization in this region. We're comprised of 20 member countries and other stakeholders, ICT stakeholders. Now, from a regional perspective, the CTU is the organization that is driving the move towards digital transformation. Hence, the theme for ICT Week is appropriately named Regional Imperatives for Accelerating Digital Transformation Post-COVID-19. And to our listeners, you're probably asking why you should attend. Now, if you have been affected or impacted by this pandemic, well, then this is a conference for you. You know, we, in the education sector, our schools, they've been forced to transition to online schooling. You know, parents have been affected because they've had to facilitate the classroom in their living room. Even in the business sector, companies have had to pivot. They've even had to integrate e-commerce platforms in their business models. And even our governments, they've had to find ways online to interact with their citizens and public in general. So at this conference, the governments, the private sector, the regulators, network operators, they all need to collaborate to provide the enabling environment for the acceleration of digital transformation. And you, as citizens, you need to know how this operates, how it relates to each other. So I urge you to come, attend this conference so you learn more about how our governments can better serve us post-COVID-19. Now, registration details are available on our website at www.ctu.int. You can also visit our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Now, what should you expect during ICT Week? ICT Week consists of the statutory meetings held by the Executive Council, and the Executive Council is comprised of our ICT permanent secretaries and technocrats. And we also host the General Conference of Ministers meeting. Now, this meeting consists of ministers, CTU ministers that are responsible for ICT in the region. And at these meetings, they adopt a harmonized approach to informing policy. During this week, we host several other events where we bring ICT stakeholders in one common forum to discuss the issues and challenges that we face in the region. On Monday, 20th September, we'll be hosting the joint meeting, and this meeting is open for all to attend. And the joint meeting is a briefing on initiatives and projects of the Secretariat that the Secretariat has undertaken on behalf of our CTU members. Now, I'll repeat, this joint meeting is the joint meeting of the General Conference of Ministers and the Executive Council, where they provide a briefing on the initiatives and projects that the Secretariat has undertaken on behalf of the CTU member states. On Wednesday, 22nd September, we'll be hosting the ministerial seminar. And this seminar educates and makes ministers more aware of trends in ICT and the implications of those trends. On Thursday, 23rd September, we'll be hosting the Technical Collaboration Forum. And this forum brings technical minds from across the region to discuss the best practices in their jurisdiction with a view to addressing technical challenges within our territories. Also happening on this day, we have the Regulatory Forum, and this forum fosters sharing of information among regulators in the CARICOM member states and encourage more significant levels of regulatory harmonization in telecoms and ICT, legal and regulatory frameworks across the region. This meeting provides a platform to share your voice, so that you can influence the decisions that are taken at a regional level. Now, some of the speakers that we've highlighted for this conference include Bob Willett. He's a former CEO of Best Buy. He will bring a global perspective on the shift to global tech. We have Doreen Bogdan from the International Telecommunications Union. Now, the ITU is a UN body with global responsibility for telecom standards and policy. We have ICANN, and they will address ministers in the region. We have John Curran from the American Registry of Internet Numbers, ARIN, and ARIN administers and allocates IP addresses in North America and the Caribbean. And from LACNIC, which is the Latin America and Caribbean Network Information Center, we have Oscar Robles, and LACNIC administers and allocates IP addresses in Latin America and the Caribbean. And Professor Avinash Prasad, he is the chairman of CARICOM on the Commission on the Economy, and he will be addressing us on how COVID-19 has impacted us from a regional perspective. And Dennis O'Brien will also be featured from Digicel will also be featured on the program during this week. So I repeat, and I encourage you to attend. For more information, you can visit our website, www.ctu.int, and you can also visit our Facebook, our LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram pages, where we've posted a lot of information on our speakers and sponsors. Do attend. We are looking forward to seeing you next week.
That certainly is a very powerful invitation, and I'm sure that many people will take it up across this region. Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. Let's turn now to the president of the CTU Council of Ministers, Antigua and Barbuda's Telecoms Minister, the Honorable Melford Nicholas. Let's bring him in now from St. John's. Welcome, Minister, and give us a sense now of where we are as far as this mandate that was given way back in 1989.
Yes, Julian, and thank you, and good morning or good day to your audiences. The mandate that the CTU has been given has been refined because, as you would have gleaned from its original mandate, at the time in 1989, some 32 years ago, the conversation was really streamed around telecommunications. But since that time, technology has moved on pretty rapidly, and there has been a fusion of information and communication technologies into one. And so in 2015, at the 28th intersessional meeting of CARICOM, heads of government, they would have approved the ICT space roadmap for the CARICOM region. And this ICT roadmap was intended to be the digital arm of the CSME. The CTU has been charged as the lead agency to execute this ICT roadmap. Of course, there are a number of other contributors to the whole ICT cluster space, That will include CARICOM Impacts and the CBU and other agencies of the government. But the CTU played a lead coordinating role. Since that time, the ICT has implemented a number of strategies and a number of initiatives that have brought us closer. One of the areas that we have done well, we have since that time embarked on a regional ICT roadshow that has brought the technology closer into the markets and have demonstrated what the integration of those technologies and implementation of those technologies can do for host governments. In 2018, the initiative got an additional fillip when the then Secretary General would have hosted a meeting here in Antigua in January of 2018 with a number of CARICOM heads where we had defined the 21st century government. And the 21st century government was really another roadmap that we would have been offering to the 20 member states as to what they need to consider in their push to digitally transform their particular economies and their administrations. And so we are on that quest at this particular point in time. And what we're doing next week is but another expression and a furtherance of that journey along the way towards the single ICT space. What we want to be able to ensure is that we remain consistent with the vision and the goals, and that is certainly going to be a part of what we would unfurl as we participate in the upcoming week's activities.
Minister, the COVID pandemic has certainly forced a lot of key decisions within the last 18 months or so. What would you, particularly since you've had a real firsthand job there in Antigua and Barbuda, would you point to be the key things that have happened so far?
Well, one of the challenges that it has done, it has forced governments to embrace ICT in a meaningful way. I can recall in the month of March last year when, certainly in Antigua's case, where we were forced with the issue that we had to have a shutdown. In those days, we had no vaccines, and our responses were driven by lots of fear and lots of concern. And the challenge remained, how are we going to continue to preside over the state affairs in that particular environment? And what it did, it forced the government to go online. By June of last year, again, faced with rising numbers for COVID infections, we were obliged to thin the numbers out in the ministries and in the offices. And we had to reduce the number of persons who were in contact with each other by upwards of 70%. And so we had only about 30% of the public sector workforce going out to work. And within that environment, many persons had to be deployed virtually. And it did work. Fortunately for the government of Antigua and Barbuda, back in 2015, we would have already adopted some of the prescribed technologies to include cloud technology, and a lot of virtual work packages became possible. So that was one of the first impacts that we had. We even had a session of Parliament online virtually, and I dare say it's probably a first and only one in the region. But we were able to slowly transition over to virtual working, and it has now become a commonplace in the government. I do not know if we're going to return ever to a situation where we have only face-to-face engagement. But that has been one of the most important impacts. Again, through our borders, when we had to contemplate minimizing personal contact because we did not know who the persons were infected, we found it necessary to deploy certain other technologies, and I believe the SG will speak to that when he has a turn, about what we are doing in the region to ensure that even as we are speaking about border entry, we are deploying digital technologies to ensure that we can remain safe, but at the same time, maintain the standards that we would want to have for transit across our borders. So there have been a number of initiatives that have been impacted by COVID, but the responses utilizing and deploying the ICT technologies has been a great help and a fillip, not only in Antigua's case, but in a number of other Caribbean jurisdictions as well.
Minister, you've given me a nice intro to the Secretary General now, and let me introduce him as the Rodney Taylor, who is a former Chief Digital Technical Officer in Barbados. He is an advisor on internet governance, and he's an ethical hacker, and he holds a master's in management and information systems from the University of Manchester, UK. Let me bring you in here, Mr. Taylor, and let's talk about the efforts at the Secretariat level in light of everything that's happened with COVID-19?
Yes, thank you very much, Julian, for having us and for allowing us to talk about ICT Week and what is happening in the region in response to COVID. Many governments, as the minister pointed out, Minister Melford, the president of the CTU, has pointed out, have had to respond in many ways, deploying information and communication technology in response to COVID. Basic things like travel into our regional member states. The need to have advanced notification of your PCR, your COVID-19 status. So the production of a negative PCR test, the uploading of a vaccination certificate to prove that you're vaccinated. These things are now more or less prerequisites to travel, to board airlines, and to enter into many CARICOM member states. And of course, in order to do that in an advanced way, you have to be able to provide platforms that people can log in and upload these documents. So many countries have moved in that direction, and this is one of the topics we'll be talking about within the region. But also, a lot of our member states have sought, as they say, you never let a good crisis go to waste. So many of our member states have sought now, because of the slowdown in short-term tourism, to leverage the information technology to provide long-term facilities for digital nomads, those persons who want to get away from sort of the COVID-19 crisis in the developed countries, New York, London, what have you, because in a sense we've managed the crisis in a relatively good way. And for the cost of accommodation in a studio apartment in Manhattan, you can rent a beachfront property in many of our Caribbean countries. And so we've seen this as an opportunity to provide a space for persons who are working remotely for tech giants in the developed countries. And this is an economic opportunity that we will be seeking to discuss within the ICT Week. But as the minister pointed out, also Minister Melford, that many governments have have had to transition their public services to an online environment, whether it's the application for a driver's license, a police certificate of character, even to make an appointment to get a vaccination and to get your results back for PCR tests. All of these things have had to be moved onto digital platforms. And so it has advanced our efforts, and the CTU now plays a critical role in ensuring that not only at the national level that governments are moving their public services onto digital platforms, but at the regional level there's harmonization so that we can facilitate travel, in particular for short-term visitors if they want to move within the CARICOM single space, that there are systems that allow for that easy transition with a quick dissemination of test results for accessing services that you might need when you're on the island. So there's been a major push. And let's not even talk about education, the school children, and those who have had to access classes via the internet, via laptops or devices. The need for us to ensure that these children have access, affordable access to the internet, because without that, they lack access to education. So information and communication technology is underpinning everything that we do as a society, as an economy, and the CTU is in a position now to help drive at the regional level to ensure that we are moving forward in a harmonized way, that we support our member states in their efforts to move towards digital transformation.
What would you say at this stage is your biggest challenge?
Well, our challenge is to ensure that there's access for everyone. So there's universal access, because you don't want to create a society where there are those who are not connected. And this is a problem globally, but we want to ensure that we address this challenge head on at the regional and national level, that there are no children left behind in terms of their connectivity, no citizens left behind, because access to the internet means access to jobs, access to economic opportunities, whether you're running a small business and even need to market yourself on social media, or if you are an entrepreneur and want to access a global market. So we need to ensure that there's universal access to reliable and efficient and affordable information technology, in particular internet access and devices, so that people can participate in this new digital economy.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Let's turn our attention then to, as you talk about education, to someone who knows the education sector of this region very well, a former registrar and chief executive officer of the Caribbean Examinations Council, who is now the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I'm talking about Dr. Didacus Jules, and he joins us from Castries, St. Lucia today to tell us exactly what the ICT strides have been made in this region, in the sub-region, so to speak. Dr. Jules?
Yeah, thank you very much, Julian. It's a pleasure to be on. The OECS has been assiduously pursuing a digital transformation agenda well before COVID, actually. And we were one of the first early adopters of Zoom technology for meetings. Pre-COVID, we had estimated that we had saved approximately 5 million EC dollars from not having to travel and doing meetings online. It has also enabled us to ramp up the extent and the scale of the work that we undertake. So in every area related to the acceleration of the prescriptions of the revised Treaty of Basse, we have working groups involving the best expertise from all of the member states, working with specialists from within the Commission in order to design and roll out programs. Right now, the major focus at the OECS is a digital transformation program, the essence of which, or the kernel of which, is a World Bank project that is a project funded by the World Bank that brings together as key partners the OECS Commission, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECTEL, which is the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority, and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. What we've done is use the World Bank project as a focal point for converging all of the initiatives that we have for digital transformation. So the major components of our overall vision have to do with creating an enabling digital environment, the provision of digital government infrastructure, platforms and services, and digital skills and technology adoption. What we have also, using this as the essential platform, we've brought to the table all of the other ICT-related initiatives that we have on the way. So for example, with UNICEF, there's a major undertaking with GIGA, which is a global initiative in which the OECS is one of 3 regions of the world in which UNICEF is working to configure a program that would ensure internet access to all schools. Now, it was said in the earlier discussions, since COVID, we have had a major pivot from learning at school to learning at home. And we have actually created an innovation within this project with UNICEF, because we've said to them, we can no longer aim to just have broadband to schools, because a major location now for learning is the home. So we have to look at ubiquitous internet as a human right, internet for learning at home. It means therefore pivoting from internet at schools to internet to homes. With the IDB and Compete Caribbean, we are working on entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems, which obviously are all wrapped around digital technology. We're working with the Caribbean Development Bank and the World Bank on data and information systems, again, in the digital realm. In the sphere of education, we're working with a major company, a global company called Velsoft, to develop an OECS digital learning ecosystem. And there are a number of other partners that we've brought to the table to do various things. In our youth work, a major thrust for us is the engagement of young people, Generation Z, in the innovation and creating solutions, digital solutions to the problems of our societies at this point in time. So that, in a nutshell, is the approach being taken by the OECS.
And you also have some credit in terms of the financial rollout of ICT and its impact on the subregion as well, with the work of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
Yes, in fact, on the table, we've been having discussions with the ECCB, particularly in the area of engagement of young people, because we believe that the youth are going to be the early and easiest adopters of the Dcash. And so there are discussions on the way on how we can work jointly with the central bank in order to push out the Dcash for digital financial inclusion across the sector. And we believe if young people get into it, then there's going to be major buy-in. Also, given the fact of the new dangerous wave of COVID, we're in our fourth dangerous wave, it is clear, therefore, that digital cash has come at the right time, so that cashless transactions is going to be an absolute imperative at this time. And it should be noted that the central bank was the first central bank in the world to have created its own digital currency. So kudos to Governor Antoine and his team for that initiative.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jules. Let me go back to Minister Nicholas here, who've had, 3 decades, I know, of experience in terms of the telecom sector, but now as a government minister since 2014, concentrating on telecoms and ICT, etc. Let me ask you, Minister, to look at the challenges of sustainability and scale, which is required if we're to make ICT really work across this region.
Yes. One of the major challenges that I think all of the CARICOM member states face at this stage, it's how does it really engage with the whole concept of ICT. And ICT for a number from the old system, where we are actually utilizing old forms of public administration in terms of the paper bureaucracy. For many CARICOM heads of government, it would be fair to say that it's a bit of a foreign concept, because apart from the technology challenging persons and their phobia, how do we allocate sufficient resources? And it is a significant cost undertaking. And from my own research and my own estimates, where countries would have done well, I'm speaking of some of the Nordic countries and even some of the former Soviet republics, Estonia would come to mind and Georgia would come to mind, where these governments have done well, reasonably well, sufficient allocation of resources have been put in place to ensure that the infrastructure that is required for governments to be able to really transform itself is there. Of course, then of course there's the application of technologies in terms of what government needs to do to be able to transform some of its agencies. Here in Antigua, we have had some support from Compete Caribbean, some very welcome support. We have just now moved our Development Control Authority, that is the agency that approves development projects. We have just now moved them into a platform where it can now be fully digital, and the engagement for 13 other agencies of the government to work digitally and seamlessly in an environment with the DCA. But the costs of the application development and the cost of implementing that technology is a significant cost, and it does not appear on the traditional budgetary allocation that we would normally do. So one of the first challenges that governments are going to be faced with, it's going to be an enormous investment to put the networks in place, to be able to have in many countries more than 250 agencies of the government, to include the police force, the fire service, the public health clinics, the hospitals, the departments of the government, the ministerial offices, to be able to get all of them to operate in one network and to do that seamlessly is a tremendous undertaking. There's the other cost of having enough computing power. And do we continue to have standalone computing systems, or do we adopt cloud technology? And if so, do we always have to have our own investment in cloud technologies? While I say this, I'm mindful that one of the major sponsors of our event next week is a cloud service provider from the region, and that is a good thing because it helps to sensitize ministers like myself and heads of government as to the need, as to where we're going to get some of these services from. So when we look at it, Julian, from the level of a molecular level, what are the things, what are some of those concrete steps that we have? We have to have sufficient financial resources allocated in budget. And I would dare say that figure is going to challenge us at about 3% of the GDP over a 5-year period consistently for us to be able to make this change. And of course, the physical components and the networks would be one cost. Then I think Dr. Jules spoke about the human development resource, that development of that human resource to be able to harness and to manage and to maintain these systems. And of course, the most serious of all the challenges would be the change management. It comes at the end of it all. I mean, Governor Antoine and I have discussed this matter, and in as much as they have done very well and have been first out of the pack to implement that and have deployed the right technologies. The question now, how do you get all of the persons who can use this technology to be able to step up to the plate and to be able to use it and harmonize it in their operations? That is the most difficult part of the challenge, I would say. So we have our work cut out to do. And from my own experience in telecommunications technology, this has been my greatest challenge yet in my dual role from both the private sector and in the public sector, to have sufficient resources and to be able to deploy it in a manner. And then, of course, at the end game, to get persons to utilize it effectively before the change can truly become sustainable.
Thank you, Minister. Let me then ask the Secretary General to give us a sense of the kind of support that the region is getting and the partnership, say, between the public and private sectors, and whether international agencies and interests are also involved in this exercise.
Thank you, Julian. So the CTU itself has provision for private sector membership because we recognize that this is the best approach in terms of developing policy that addresses both the needs of the private sector and the public sector. And also we have a membership category for non-governmental organizations and civil society. So we bring together all of these views, and in fact, they will be represented in the ICT Week next week. We have several private sector members, and they are part of the policy development process. And the private sector is critical if we're talking about building up the ICT sector within the region. We can point to many pan-Caribbean companies that are operating in several jurisdictions that have made significant investments in the ICT infrastructure. And they have also, they provide significant employment as well regionally. And so it's important that they are part of the discussion in terms of the development of policy, that they work hand in hand with government, and that our regulations that govern how they operate are provide for competition, provide and promote innovation, so that these companies have space to innovate and offer new product and service offerings, and that they can continue to grow and continue to operate within a regional framework, because there's harmonized policies in relation to how we manage spectrum in the case of mobile operators, or there are harmonized policies in terms of data protection, cybersecurity, and so on, as you move from one jurisdiction to the next. So the private sector is a part of our discussions in terms of policy development. They're significant, of course, in terms of the investments that they've made in fiber infrastructure, subsea fiber, in terms of data centers, in terms of terrestrial fiber and wireless communications, in terms of the people that they employ within the sector. And so, of course, at the apex of the CTU, we have the ministers who set the policy. That policy has to be informed by persons in the industry, private sector, civil society, academia, and so on. And so the CTU provides that space. And I'm happy to say that we do have a very open and collaborative relationship with all players within the sector.
Let me ask Dr. Jules to just give us a sneak preview, because he's down to present during the week of his presentation that's coming up. Dr. Jules, why should we join to hear you?
Well, I always try to bring disruptive perspectives to the table, Julian, because I think sometimes we tend to, in the Caribbean, look at things too much from a cliched perspective. And I think the major message I'm bringing in my address to the conference is that at the end of the day, digital transformation is not really a technology thing. It is a mindset thing. It is about, changing our approach to things. It is about doing three essential things to achieve our vision: charting the way, enabling the way, and making the way. And charting the way is about the need to educate, equip, empower our own people. One of the challenges I've found in this issue, in the rollout of digital transformation initiatives in the region, is that we tend to be too often subscribers to other person's technology. We have huge talent in the region. We have amazing talent in our diaspora. And none of that talent is being adequately leveraged to serve the needs and create solutions to the problems that we face in this region. We are prepared to spend millions of dollars subscribing to software that we can more easily and effectively create in our region. Now, this is not a xenophobic perspective. It is simply that we are being seduced by the technology and Greeks bearing gifts, but we are not looking deeper into the issue to see the opportunities for us to play our equal role on the global stage. We have the talent, we have the intellect, we have the competencies. So I'm bringing that into the mix of the discussion and looking at exactly in what ways can we trigger that change of mindset and empower our own people to become shapers of their own digital destiny.
As you talk about people, it just gives me an opportunity to ask Minister Nicholas really to address the whole matter of hesitancy, reluctance, miseducation, misunderstanding, the whole matter of getting everybody on board in terms of using technology in their lives.
Again, it's a multifaceted issue. And I think one of the earlier speakers, it might have been Dr. Jules, who would have pointed out that young people, certainly below the age of 35, are born digital citizens. So for them, adopting the use of technology is not an issue. In fact, it is their preferred way of engaging with businesses and with agencies of the government. So for them, adoption of technology is not an issue. What we have to deal with is the middle strata of our society, those persons who form most likely the senior part of our public service, and of course, heads of commerce. That's the area where the adoption is a little slower. And of course, we have to also deal with the population of persons who are retired. They're no less significant. And how do we entreat with them to ensure that they are not left out as we make these transitions? I've had the opportunity to travel to the country, the state of Georgia, former Soviet Republic, where they have done this very well. And they have created a hybrid environment where, in as much as they have been totally digitally transformed, they have still allowed for that human interface to ensure that an elderly person, could be a farmer, it could be a retired grandmother, who is not au fait with the technology, can get into what they call a public hall. And because each of the citizens in Georgia have a digital format of the identity, they can present their digital ID cards and request any of one of 300 services from the government. And there are tellers who are operating in those particular environments who are able to facilitate them and to ensure that the transaction is done digitally, but they, in fact, through that public hall, provides them with that interface. And I rather like that hybrid model that they use, and I do intend over the coming months and years to implement such facilities and regimes in Antigua. And hopefully I will share that practice with the rest of CARICOM as well. So across the board, I think it is easier for the younger portion of the population, which represents approximately 30–45% of our populations, to be able to adopt. So that's built in. But the other two sets we have to work on. And of course, where the challenge comes now is how do we maintain the integrity of our bureaucracies to ensure that all of the governance frameworks are built in, all of the checks and balances are in fact included, but at the same time maintaining those while as well re-engineering some of those processes to ensure that we can do it more efficiently and effectively And that is a major part of the work that we have to undertake as we go forward.
I will put the similar point to the Secretary General of the CTU, Rodney Taylor.
So what you'll find is that for the younger generation, this is second nature. Our young people have grown up with the technology. They're glued to their mobile phones. And so it's a natural expectation that they would interact with society, with government services in a digital context. We do have the older generation that we do need to bring on board in terms of raising the level of awareness that they have of how technology can benefit them, from the business community as well. So all across society, our entrepreneurs need to understand that the brick and mortar model of doing business, even if you're in retail, if you're selling clothes, if you're selling food, if you're offering services, that there's a digital component, marketing to the online fulfillment of orders and that kind of thing. So there's a whole education program that needs to happen. There's an awareness that has to happen as well. And the CTU has in the past, through the Caribbean ICT Roadshow, gone in to our member states at the national level and have sought to build awareness of the power of information technology to drive innovation, to create new business models. And this is important because a lot of the developed countries, I could mention Singapore, Estonia, as the minister has pointed out previously, that have been in these digital modes of service delivery for decades. And if we don't push this message out to the wider society, and if there isn't that acceptance within our schools, within our business communities, small businesses in particular, across all sectors, even in agriculture, we talk about things like smart farming, right? Smart cities, things that traditionally are not connected with technology. But how, as a farmer, if I'm managing a farm, how do I ensure that I'm deploying irrigation in the most efficient way using technology, using drone technology to manage my crops and to be able to see and combat things like radial larceny. From a law enforcement perspective, to be able to build smart cities and detect if there's an issue, transportation. So ICT is cross-cutting, and it is important for us to be able to educate through our forums within the CTU, but also through national campaigns to help every single member of society understand the power of technology. It's native to our young people, and unfortunately our government services are now trying to catch up by moving a lot of the services to digital modes. But I think we can get there. But public education awareness has to be a key part of our thrust.
I can't help but ask Dr. Jules one quick statement before he goes off about the impact of all of this on education because of your overall background.
Yeah, well, Julian, I've always maintained that we have an unrecognized opportunity here. People talk about setting up innovation labs, about doing incubation centers and so on. The biggest incubator of ICT and the biggest innovator is called the education system. But we do have to pivot our education system to embrace the technology and to liberate the creative energies of our youth in not just learning to use programs, but learning to create their own programs. Before I left CXC, some of the things we had done was to set up subjects like digital media, the SBA for which involve allowing requiring that students pick up a problem or a challenge and actually shape a digital solution to that problem. The youth have to be at the forefront, and I think we need to look at the education system, particularly in the new normal in a post-pandemic world. How does our education system become the spare point of that digital transformation effort? Put youth at the forefront, and I believe too that there are huge opportunities for young people to serve as the kind of training core that would get older people on board as well. I have seen in my personal life cases where grandparents are now very avid users of things like FaceTime and other technologies because their grandchildren have been teaching them to use it. But what we'd have to ensure here is that the technologies that we deploy are simple enough that the humblest person is able to make full use of it. I visited Kenya some time ago and was able to see firsthand the application of their digital currency, M-Pesa, in markets, in supermarkets, in use by farmers, ordinary higglers on the roadside, being able to transact business using digital currency. We believe that technology is a complicated thing. It is not about the technology, it's about how we enable people and empower people through technology.
All right, and I'm going to ask, thank you very much, Dr. Jules. Let me ask Minister now to extend an invitation to people to come and join you for this special ICT week from the 20th to the 24th. Let's lay it on the table and extend the invitation.
Yes, thank you, Julian. And I would just want to say that as far as the CTU is concerned, I am proud as its president to say that it is really one of the frontline performing agencies of CARICOM. Many times persons would ask, what is the importance of CARICOM? And I think the work that is being done, certainly at the CTU Secretariat, and what they have done as evidence to me since I have become a Minister of Government over the last 7 years has been nothing short of spectacular. Next week's meeting and the public sessions will at least, of course, alert and educate persons who make themselves available for these forums to be able to see at an intimate level the type of work that is being done and the way it will manifest in their own respective state governments. So we are certainly on course to deliver another exceptional set of presentations, and it's going to further the work that we are doing and advance that particular space. We are expecting as well that out of the engagement, it will stimulate more ideas and more innovation and more engagements, even in the home markets. And so this is an important aspect that we will hope to pick up additional engagements coming out of these particular forums. So I'm appealing especially to all ICT-based companies, all ICT practitioners and professionals to avail yourself of this opportunity. It's a free opportunity to participate in many of these forums. And of course, it's an excellent opportunity to network as well. And so both from the networking and from the engagement and sharing of ideas and creating that level of synergy that is so important in this particular field of endeavor. We're certainly going to want to see you in this space and are looking forward to a fruitful engagement.
Thank you, Minister. And I'll give the same honor to the Secretary General of the CTU. Mr. Taylor, would you extend the invitation as well?
Certainly, and the good thing is I certainly would like to extend an invitation to all of our regional stakeholders to participate in the CTU ICT Week 2021. There is no charge, and I'll be honest, I don't think you'll find a conference of this caliber that for which there is no entry fee. And we're providing the conference is being facilitated through a virtual conference hosting platform that allows for interaction, so you have the ability to network with colleagues across the region and across the world. We have some high-profile speakers from the International Telecommunications Union, from the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, from the American Registry for Internet Numbers, from the Caribbean Public Health Agency looking at COVID and regional imperatives to allow us to move freely within the region within the context of COVID-19. We also have this topics in relation to the region, the Caribbean region, as a mecca for digital nomads. How can we, leverage this crisis to reposition ourselves so we're not totally dependent upon short-term visitor arrivals, that we can entice people who work for the global tech giants who have skills to offer to come and enjoy all that we have to offer as a region, ensuring that we have the technological infrastructure to support them. Right, whether they're lecturing at a university, whether they're working for a Fortune 500 company, they have access to the world-class infrastructure here within the region. So I encourage you to come. It's free of cost. We have representation from all sectors of society And I think it will be a wonderful engagement. We'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to hear your experience. And from that, we can generate policy and help to take the region forward. Thank you.
And I'm giving the last word to Michelle Garcia, the comms lady, who started our show today. And I know you'd want to share with the audience specific ways in which they can participate.
Yes. So once again, we encourage you to join our CTU ICT Week 2021. And you can register, as I said, via our website, via www.ctu.int. You will register on one of our event hosting platforms. And once you join the conference, you'll be able to interact with us during the conference. So, or we will be streaming live on our Facebook and Twitter channels. So look for us, Caribbean Telecommunications, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you very much to our panel. Thank you all for joining us. And don't forget to get involved and be part of the CTU's ICT Week. I'm Julian Rogers in Kingston on Caribbean Bridges.